The gallery closing felt like a small mercy after 10 hours of negotiating with an artist who insisted his abstract pieces needed to be hung at precisely eye level for someone 6'3". My shoulders ached from the tension, my voice hoarse from diplomatic explanations about lighting and wall space. The contemporary exhibition was scheduled to open in 5 days, and nothing was where it needed to be. I pushed through the revolving door of my apartment building just after 8, the November cold biting through my wool coat. My building wasn't much, a 6-story walk-up in a neighborhood the real estate listings optimistically called up and coming. But it was mine. 4 years of saving and scraping, and I had a place with my name on the lease. The envelope caught my eye immediately. Cream-colored paper, expensive weight, lying against the scuffed threshold of apartment 4B, like it had been placed there by someone who knew exactly where I lived. My stomach tightened as I bent to retrieve it, scanning the empty hallway. The fluorescent bulb 2 doors down flickered its usual broken rhythm, casting shadows that moved when nothing else did. Inside, I locked the deadbolt and chain before examining the envelope properly. No return address. My name written in dark ink across the front, the handwriting elegant and deliberate. Something about those letters stirred a memory I couldn't quite grasp, like a song heard through walls. I slid my finger under the sealed flap. Inside, a single card on matching cream stock. The words were handwritten in the same careful script. Bella notte. Thursday, 8 p.m. Come alone. I've been waiting. No signature, no explanation. Just an address in the Upper East Side and a date 3 days from now. My phone was in my hand before I consciously decided to call anyone. Brittany answered on the second ring, music pounding in the background. "Hold on, I'm at spin class," she shouted. The noise cut off abruptly as she stepped into what I assumed was a quieter hallway. "What's wrong? You never call during my workout. I need you to look at something. Can you come over?" 20 minutes later, Brittany sat cross-legged on my second-hand couch, the invitation held between 2 fingers like it might be contaminated. Her blonde hair was still damp from the gym shower, pulled into a messy knot at her neck. "This is creepy, Meg. Who sends anonymous invitations?" "I don't know." I paced the narrow space between my coffee table and the kitchen counter, but the handwriting looks familiar. I can't place it, but I know I've seen it before. Brittany's blue eyes narrowed. "You think it's from an ex? Because if Ryan found out where you live, I'm calling the police right now." "No. God, no." Ryan's handwriting looked like a doctor's prescription pad had a seizure. "This is different. Careful, almost old-fashioned." She studied the card again, turning it over to examine the blank reverse. "Bella Knott is expensive. Like, need a second mortgage expensive. I looked into it once for a client event and nearly fainted at the quote. So someone with money wants to meet me." I dropped onto the couch beside her. "That narrows it down to absolutely no one I know. You're not actually considering going." Brittany's voice went flat, the tone she used when she thought I was being irrational. This could be anything. A prank, a scam, a very elaborate serial killer. Or it could be important. Important how? "Megan, you don't even know who sent it." I couldn't explain the pull I felt toward that invitation. The handwriting had awakened something dormant. A curiosity mixed with recognition that I couldn't ignore. For the past 8 years, I'd built a careful, predictable life. Work at the gallery, drinks with Brittany on Fridays, the occasional forgettable date with men who never called back. Safe, contained, boring. "I'm going," I heard myself say. Brittany threw the invitation onto the coffee table. "Then I'm going with you. It says come alone. I'll sit at the bar. Close enough to intervene if someone tries to chloroform you. Far enough away that your mysterious benefactor won't notice." We compromised. Brittany would stay home, but I'd text her every 15 minutes. If she didn't hear from me by 9:30, she'd call the police with the restaurant's address and a description of what I was wearing. Thursday arrived wrapped in clouds that threatened precipitation without delivering. I left work early, claiming a migraine that wasn't entirely fabricated. At home, I stood before my closet for 20 minutes, rejecting outfit after outfit. Too formal, too casual, too much like I was trying too hard. Finally, I settled on an emerald green silk blouse Brittany had convinced me to buy during a sample sale, paired with tailored black pants and low heels I could run in if necessary. Gold studs in my ears, minimal makeup, hair loose around my shoulders. Professional but not intimidating, approachable but not desperate. The first drops of precipitation began as I stepped outside at 7:15. By the time the cab dropped me at Bellanata's discreet entrance, the sky had opened into a steady downpour that drummed against awnings and turned the sidewalk into a river of reflected streetlights. The restaurant's exterior was understated elegance. A brass plaque beside a heavy wooden door, the only indication of what lay beyond. No flashy signage, no velvet ropes, just old money whispering its presence to those who knew where to look. I pushed inside, shaking droplets from my coat. Warmth enveloped me immediately, along with the scent of garlic, fresh basil, and something rich baking in distant ovens. The interior glowed golden, crystal sconces casting light across cream walls adorned with Italian landscapes in gilded frames. Fresh flowers overflowed from vases on every available surface, their perfume mingling with the food. A man in an impeccable black suit materialized at my elbow. Not young, perhaps 60, with silver hair combed back from a lined face, and eyes that assessed me with professional courtesy. "Good evening, miss. Do you have a reservation?" "I'm not sure. Someone invited me. The name would be under Foster. Megan Foster." His expression shifted subtly, a flicker of recognition that disappeared so quickly I might have imagined it. "Of course. Right this way, please." He led me through the main dining room, past tables occupied by couples speaking in low voices, past a corner where 4 businessmen laughed over wine, to a hallway I hadn't noticed from the entrance. We walked in silence, my heels clicking against marble floors, until he opened a door onto a private space. The room was smaller than the main dining area, more intimate. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked an internal courtyard where rain created patterns on stone pathways and dripped from the leaves of carefully maintained plants. A single table sat in the center, dressed in white linen with a candle already burning in a hurricane glass. "Your server will be with you momentarily," the man said, pulling out my chair with practiced grace. I sat, feeling suddenly exposed in the empty room. The door closed with a soft click, leaving me alone with the candle flame and the sound of precipitation against glass. I checked my phone. 7:58. 2 minutes until 8. At precisely 8:02, a young waiter appeared carrying a leather-bound menu. He set it before me with a slight bow. "May I offer you a cocktail while you wait?" "A martini, please. Dry." He vanished as soundlessly as he'd arrived. I opened the menu without seeing the words, my attention divided between the door and the windows. Outside, the courtyard glistened under strategically placed lights. Each raindrop transformed into a small star as it fell. The martini arrived in a crystal glass, perfectly clear, 3 olives speared on a silver pick. I thanked the waiter and took a careful sip, the cold liquid burning pleasantly down my throat. The alcohol hit my empty stomach, spreading warmth through my chest. I was reaching for my phone to text Brittany when I noticed it. Something at the bottom of the glass, catching the candlelight. I tilted the drink, peering through the gin. A ring. A vintage ring with a diamond center stone, sitting at the bottom of my martini like some surreal prize. My hand trembled as I set the glass down. I fished the ring out with my fingers, heedless of the liquid dripping onto the white tablecloth. The metal was cold, the diamond genuine if the way it caught the light was any indication. Old-fashioned setting, delicate filigree work along the band. "I was afraid you wouldn't come." The voice froze me. Deep, familiar in a way that sent my pulse into overdrive, carrying an accent I'd heard in dreams for years. I looked up slowly, afraid that turning too quickly would shatter whatever impossible moment this was. He stood in the doorway, backlit by the hallway's softer illumination. Taller than I remembered, broader through the shoulders, wearing a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been created for his body alone. Dark hair pushed back from his face, strong jaw shadowed with stubble that was either meticulously maintained or naturally perfect. But it was the eyes that confirmed what my racing heart already knew. Dark brown, almost black in the dim light, fixed on me with an intensity that made breathing difficult. Anthony. His name escaped as barely more than a whisper. 8 years since I'd spoken it aloud. 8 years since I'd seen him walk away from everything we'd built together with nothing but a 2-line letter as explanation. He crossed the room in 3 strides, movements fluid and controlled, without asking, without hesitating. He pulled out the chair across from me and sat. The candle flame danced between us, casting shadows across features that were familiar and foreign all at once. "You look exactly the same," he said softly, "and completely different." I couldn't form words. My brain had short-circuited somewhere between recognizing his voice and processing the fact that he was real, solid, sitting close enough to touch. The ring was still clutched in my fist, metal warming against my palm. Anthony's gaze dropped to my hand. That was my grandmother's. She gave it to me before she died, told me to give it to the woman I loved. The present tense registered. Not loved. Love. Current. Ongoing. Anger finally broke through the shock. "You have no right to say that to me." "I know. You disappeared. You left a letter that said nothing, explained nothing, and then you vanished like you'd never existed." "I know. We were 17. We had plans. College together, apartments in the city, everything mapped out. My voice was rising despite my efforts to control it, and you threw it all away without even giving me a reason." Anthony leaned forward, elbows on the table, hands clasped. The candlelight caught on a scar across the back of his right hand that definitely hadn't been there 8 years ago. I had reasons. Terrible, necessary reasons that I couldn't explain then, because explaining them would have put you in danger. That's convenient. Blame it on mysterious danger. Megan. My name in his mouth after so long sent a shiver through me that I refused to acknowledge. I spent 8 years looking for you. Every investigator I could hire, every connection I could leverage. You moved to Philadelphia for college, then Boston for 2 years, then back here to New York. You changed your phone number 4 times. You made yourself almost impossible to find. Ice replaced the anger. You were tracking me? I needed to know you were safe, that you were happy, or at least alive and building a life. He reached across the table, stopping just short of touching my hand. I couldn't be part of that life, but I needed to know it existed. Why? The question came out broken. Why couldn't you be part of it? Why did you leave? Anthony sat back, shadows deepening the lines around his eyes. He looked older than 28, like he'd lived more years than the calendar allowed. My father died 2 years ago. Before that, he ran a very specific kind of business. The kind that doesn't appear in phone books or file taxes, honestly. When I was 17, he was consolidating power after a war within the organization. People were dying. Associates, rivals, anyone connected to our family became targets. The words landed like stones. Your family. You mean the mob. The family Rossi, specifically. My father built an empire, and I was his only son. His heir. Anthony's jaw tightened. The people who wanted him dead started looking at everyone he cared about. My mother was already gone by then. Cancer when I was 15. That left me. And by extension, you. I wanted to stand. To walk out. To pretend I hadn't heard what he was telling me. But I stayed frozen. Trapped by the gravity of his confession. Someone took pictures of us together. Outside school. At the pizza place we went to every Friday. In the park where we used to study. My father's security found them during a sweep of a rival's property. You were already marked, Megan. They knew your name, your address, your mother's work schedule. Everything. My mother. I hadn't thought about her in months. Guilt washing over me for not calling more often. My father gave me a choice, Anthony continued, voice level despite the tension in his shoulders. End it completely. Make you hate me enough that you'd never come looking, never be connected to our world again. Or watch them use you to hurt me, hurt him, hurt everyone. So you chose the coward's way. I chose your life over my happiness. And I'd make the same choice again. His eyes met mine, unwavering. But I never stopped looking for you. Never stopped hoping that one day, when I had the power to protect you properly, I could find you again. The ring felt heavy in my palm. And now you have that power. I run everything my father built. I've spent 2 years consolidating, eliminating threats, building alliances. I'm not invincible, but I'm strong. Strong enough to keep you safe if you'll let me. Keep me safe from what? You're saying your world is still dangerous. Always. But now I control enough of it that I can create a shelter within the storm. He reached across again, and this time his fingers brushed mine where they lay on the table. The touch sent electricity up my arm. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to let me explain, to give me a chance to show you that what we had wasn't just teenage stupidity. I should have said no, should have stood up, walked out, blocked his number, and forgotten this surreal evening ever happened. Instead, I heard myself ask, why the ring and the drink? Why not just call? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Because you would have hung up the moment you heard my voice, and I needed you here, in person, where you couldn't run before hearing me out. Manipulative. Necessary. Outside, the precipitation had intensified, turning the courtyard into a watercolor painting of greens and grays. Inside, the candle continued its steady burn, wax pooling at the base. I don't know what you expect from me, I finally said. You can't just reappear after 8 years and expect everything to be the same. I don't. But I expect you to feel something, even if it's just anger, because feeling nothing would mean I really did destroy what we had. Anthony's gaze held mine. Tell me you feel nothing, and I'll leave. I'll disappear again, and this time I won't come back. But I couldn't say it. Because sitting across from him, smelling the cologne that was different but somehow still distinctly his, seeing the way his hands moved when he talked, hearing that voice that had narrated my dreams for years, I felt everything. Anger and attraction and confusion, and a desperate, terrifying hope that maybe, impossibly, we could find our way back to what we'd lost. I set the ring on the table between us, pushing it toward him across the white linen. I'm not accepting this. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I'm listening. You said you had reasons for leaving. Start from the beginning, and don't leave anything out. Anthony picked up the ring, turning it between his fingers so the diamond caught the light. Then he slipped it into his jacket pocket and began to talk, his voice low and steady, telling me about a world I'd never imagined, and the boy I'd loved who'd grown into someone I wasn't sure I recognized anymore. Anthony's explanation stretched on for what felt like hours, but was probably closer to 40 minutes. He detailed a world I'd only seen in movies, territory disputes and coded loyalty, old family bloodlines and newer organizations trying to carve out space. His father's rise, the consolidation of power, the enemies made along the way people disappeared when they crossed certain lines. I sat rigid in my chair, hands folded in my lap to hide their trembling. The martini sat forgotten. Ice melted into clear liquid that no longer resembled the drink I'd ordered. Every word he spoke built a wall between us, brick by brick, until I could barely see the boy I'd loved through the structure of who he'd become. Why now? The question interrupted him mid-sentence about territory negotiations. You said you're stable, that you have power. But why bring me back into this? Why not just let me live my safe, boring life? Anthony leaned back in his chair, candlelight catching the sharp angles of his face. Because safe and boring isn't living, and because I'm tired of existing in a world where everyone wants something from me except the one person I actually want. That's not fair. You don't get to make me responsible for your happiness after abandoning me. I'm not. I'm asking for a chance to prove that what we had was real. That it's still real, underneath 8 years of distance and damage. His voice dropped lower. Tell me you don't feel it. The pull. Tell me you walked in here tonight and felt nothing. I couldn't. Because he was right. The moment I'd seen him in the doorway, my heart had recognized him before my brain could mount a defense. Every cell in my body remembered his proximity. The way his presence altered the air around me. Feeling something doesn't mean I should act on it. I pushed back from the table, standing abruptly. My purse caught on the chair arm, nearly tumbling to the floor before I grabbed it. This was a mistake. I shouldn't have come. Megan, wait. But I was already moving toward the door, heels clicking against marble with purpose I didn't feel. My hand was on the handle when his voice stopped me. Please. Just let me take you home. It's pouring, and you'll never find a cab in this weather. Every instinct screamed at me to refuse, to walk out into the downpour and let the water wash away this entire surreal evening. But practical reality overrode emotion. He was right about the cabs, and the subway would mean walking 6 blocks in a deluge. Fine, but that's all. A ride home, and then we're done. Whatever you need. The hallway seemed longer walking out than it had coming in. Anthony stayed 2 steps behind me, close enough that I could feel his presence but far enough to avoid touching. The maitre d' appeared as we reached the main dining room, producing my coat from somewhere with the efficiency of expensive service. Anthony held it open. I slipped my arms into the sleeves, hyper-aware of his hands on my shoulders as he settled the fabric into place. His fingers lingered for half a second too long before releasing. Outside, the precipitation had evolved from steady downpour to absolute deluge. Water rushed along the curbs, carrying leaves and debris in miniature rivers. Streetlights reflected off the wet pavement in streaks of gold and white. A black car materialized at the curb, appearing so quickly I suspected it had been waiting nearby. The rear door opened, and Anthony gestured for me to enter first. I hesitated, old warnings about getting into cars with strangers warring with the reality that this stranger was someone I'd once known better than myself. I slid across leather seats still warm from the heater. Anthony followed, settling in beside me with careful distance between our bodies. The driver was older than I'd expected, maybe mid-30s, with dark hair cut military short and eyes that assessed me in the rearview mirror with professional neutrality. "Joseph, this is Megan. She needs a ride home safely." "Of course, boss." Joseph's voice carried the trace of a Brooklyn accent, rough around the edges but not unfriendly. "Address, miss?" I recited my street and building number, watching the city slide past the tinted windows as Joseph pulled into traffic. The interior smelled of leather and something else, cedar maybe or sandalwood. Definitely expensive. Silence stretched between us, broken only by the rhythm of windshield wipers and the occasional hiss of tires through water. I kept my gaze fixed on the passing buildings, counting blocks to avoid looking at Anthony's reflection in the glass. "My father built everything on codes," he said finally, voice cutting through the quiet. "Honor among thieves," he used to say, which sounds ridiculous but meant something concrete in his world. You don't harm innocents. You don't involve families unless they're already in the business. You keep your word, even when it costs you. And everyone just follows these codes? I couldn't keep the skepticism from my tone. The smart ones do. The ones who want to survive. He shifted, and I felt rather than saw him turn toward me. I won't lie and say we're good people. We're not. But we're not monsters either. There are rules, structures, ways things are done. That's supposed to make me feel better. That organized crime is organized. It's supposed to help you understand that I can keep you safe within this world. That protection means something real, not just words. I finally looked at him, finding his profile outlined by passing streetlights. "I don't need protection. I've been fine for 8 years without you." "Have you?" The question held no judgment, just genuine curiosity. "Has it been fine, Megan? Working yourself to exhaustion at a job that underpays you, living in a building with broken locks, dating men who don't see you the way I do?" Heat flooded my face. "You had me investigated. I told you, I kept track. I needed to know you were safe. That's not keeping track, that's stalking. Call it what you want. But I'm not apologizing for making sure you were alive, and as happy as you could be without me." His jaw tightened. "And before you accuse me of being a controlling bastard, know that I never interfered. Never contacted your employers. Never scared off the men you dated. Never inserted myself into your life. I just watched from a distance and hated every second of it." The car slowed, pulling to a stop in front of my building. Through the rain-streaked window, I could see the familiar cracked awning, the lobby light that flickered at unpredictable intervals, the security door that hadn't locked properly in 6 months. Joseph kept the engine running but made no move to get out. Professional discretion, I realized, giving us privacy to finish our conversation. Anthony reached into his jacket, producing a business card from an interior pocket. Heavy stock, cream-colored like the invitation, with a phone number embossed in black ink. Nothing else. No name, no title, no company. This is my private line. It goes directly to me, day or night. He held it out, waiting until I took it before continuing. I understand if you never want to see me again. I understand if you throw this away the moment you're inside. But keep it for 24 hours at least. Think about what I said. Think about whether you really feel nothing. I stared at the card, expensive paper warming between my fingers. What do you want from me, Anthony? Specifically, a chance to know you again. To show you that underneath everything that's changed, I'm still the person you trusted once. He leaned forward slightly, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Something dark and woodsy that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. I want to prove that walking away from you was the hardest thing I've ever done, and that I'll never make that mistake again. And if I say no, if I decide this is too complicated, too dangerous, too everything, then I'll respect that decision. I'll disappear again, and this time I'll stay gone. His eyes held mine, dark and intense in the dim interior. But I don't think you'll say no, because you felt it too. The moment our eyes met, you recognized it. What we had didn't die, Megan. It just went dormant. I reached for the door handle, needing distance to process everything. I can't make any promises. I'm not asking for promises, just consideration. Joseph appeared outside my door with an umbrella, shielding me from the worst of the precipitation as I exited. I clutched my purse and the business card, grateful for the darkness hiding whatever expression was on my face. Thank you for the ride, I said to both of them. My voice strained. Sleep on it, Anthony called as I turned toward the building. And Megan, lock your deadbolt. That security door isn't going to stop anyone determined. I didn't respond, just hurried through the rain to the lobby, punching in the code that would open the main door. Inside, I risked a glance back. The black car still idled at the curb, Anthony visible through the window, watching until I was safely inside. The elevator was broken again, so I climbed 4 flights with legs that felt detached from my body. Inside my apartment, I locked the deadbolt and chain, then leaned against the door, breathing hard from something that wasn't physical exertion. The business card was still clutched in my hand. The edges softened from my grip. I set it on the counter, staring at the simple numbers as if they might rearrange themselves into answers. My phone buzzed. Brittany's name lit the screen with 7 missed calls and a string of increasingly frantic texts. I'm alive, I texted back. Call you tomorrow. Sleep was impossible. I paced my tiny apartment, making tea I didn't drink, scrolling through my phone without seeing the content. Around 2 a.m, I opened my laptop and typed Rossi Family New York into the search bar. The results were frustratingly vague. Articles about restaurants, a few mentions in business journals about import-export companies, society page photos from charity events where men in expensive tuxedos smiled for cameras. Anthony appeared in 3 photos, always on the edges, never the focus. In each one, he looked exactly as I'd seen him tonight, composed and powerful. Nothing explicitly criminal. But the careful vagueness felt intentional, like a coat of paint over something darker underneath. I was still researching at 4 a.m. when exhaustion finally dragged me to bed. I dreamed of hands reaching through precipitation, of voices calling names I couldn't quite hear, of doors that opened onto rooms that didn't exist. The next 3 days passed in a fog. I went through the motions at the gallery, smiling at collectors, arranging pieces for the exhibition, taking calls from artists demanding last-minute changes. But my mind was elsewhere, replaying conversations, analyzing words, trying to separate what I felt from what I should feel. Brittany cornered me Friday evening at our usual bar, sliding into the booth across from me with determination in her eyes. All right, enough silence. What happened Thursday night? I took a long drink of wine, buying time. I saw Anthony. Anthony who? Then her eyes went wide. Anthony Rossi. Your high school Anthony? He sent the invitation. Set up the whole thing. Wanted to explain why he left. And? What was the explanation? I gave her the abbreviated version, leaving out the details about organized crime and focusing on the protection angle. Brittany listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from curiosity to concern to something close to alarm. Megan, that's insane. He admits he's been tracking you for 8 years and you don't see that as a massive red flag. I know how it sounds. Do you? Because from here, it sounds like you're considering giving a stalker a second chance. He's not a stalker. He's complicated. Complicated is one word for it. She reached across the table, grabbing my hand. Promise me you'll be careful. Whatever you decide, just be smart about it. That night, alone again in my apartment, I picked up Anthony's card for the 100th time. The numbers seemed to pulse in the lamplight, daring me to dial. I set it down, picked it up, set it down again. I was about to force myself to bed when my phone rang. Unknown number. My thumb hovered over decline for 3 seconds before curiosity won. Hello? Static crackled. Then a voice. Male, with an accent I couldn't place. Vaguely Asian, maybe Japanese. Miss Foster. We should talk about your dinner date. Ice shot through my veins. Who is this? Someone interested in your association with Anthony Rossi. You've become a person of interest, Miss Foster. Congratulations on that dangerous distinction. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult us both with lies. You were seen entering Bella Notte Thursday evening. You sat with Rossi for over an hour. You left in his car. The voice remained pleasant, almost friendly, which somehow made it more terrifying. These are simple facts. What's less simple is deciding what to do about them. My hand shook so violently I nearly dropped the phone. I want nothing to do with any of this. Unfortunately, wanting has little to do with reality. You're connected now, Miss Foster, and connections have consequences. The line went dead. I stared at the blank screen, heart hammering against my ribs. Every shadow in my apartment suddenly seemed darker, more threatening. The window I always left cracked for air circulation now felt like an invitation for intrusion. Calling the police flickered across my mind, but this wasn't a problem for people who lived strictly inside the law. Whatever world had just brushed against mine, Anthony understood it in a way no detective ever could. Anthony's card was in my hand before I made a conscious decision to pick it up. My fingers trembled so badly I had to dial twice before getting the numbers right. He answered on the first ring. Megan. Someone just called me. A man. He knew about Thursday. He said, I'm connected now, that there are consequences. The words tumbled out in a rush. Anthony, I'm scared. Lock your door. Don't open it for anyone. I'm 15 minutes away. How do you know where I am? Because I never stopped watching after I dropped you off. Joseph's been on your building since Thursday night. I'm coming now. Stay on the line with me. You've had someone watching me for 3 days? Protecting you. There's a difference. I heard car doors slamming, an engine starting. Talk to me, Megan. Tell me exactly what he said. I recited the conversation, voice shaking. Anthony's silence on the other end felt heavier than words. That's Yamaguchi, he said finally. Japanese organization. We've had territorial disagreements, but they've stayed cold until now. If they're calling you directly, they're sending a message to me. What kind of message? That they know how to hurt me. Stay where you are. Don't open the door until you hear my voice. 14 minutes later, a knock thundered against my door. Megan, it's Anthony. Open up. I undid the chain and deadbolt with fingers that barely functioned. Anthony filled the doorway, Joseph and 2 other large men flanking him. All 4 moved with purpose, checking my apartment with professional efficiency. Clear, one of the men said after checking the bedroom and bathroom. Anthony's attention fixed on me, assessing. You're okay? He didn't threaten you explicitly? Just implications, consequences for being connected to you. Anger was replacing fear, hot and clarifying. This is what you meant by protection. This is the reality of your world. Yes. No apology, just confirmation. And now you're part of it whether we like it or not. They saw us together, which means you're leverage, a vulnerability they can exploit. So what do I do? Move? Change my name? Pretend Thursday never happened? That won't help. They have your information, your routine. Moving would just delay the inevitable. He turned to Joseph. Set up a rotation on the building. 2 men at all times, 1 on the street, 1 in the lobby. No one approaches her without clearance. Already done, boss. Called it in from the car. Anthony's jaw tightened as he looked back at me. I'm sorry. This is exactly what I was afraid of 8 years ago. Except now I have the resources to handle it properly. Handle it how? By making it clear that you're under my protection. That touching you means war. They're not prepared to fight. He moved closer. stopping just outside my personal space. But I need your permission. I need you to trust that I can keep you safe. I don't have much choice, do I? You always have a choice. But some choices have safer outcomes than others. His voice dropped. Let me protect you, Megan. Let me show you that I meant what I said about never walking away again. Through my window, I could see a black SUV parked across the street, engine running. 2 more men in dark suits stood at intervals along the sidewalk, their positions chosen for optimal sightlines. My quiet, boring life had evaporated in one phone call. Anthony had warned me his world was dangerous, but I hadn't truly understood until threat became personal. What happens now? Now we make sure they understand the cost of going after what's mine. The possessive word sent a shiver through me. And you stay close until this resolves. How close? As close as you'll allow. His hand reached up, stopping just short of touching my face. I know this isn't what you wanted, but I promise you, Megan, no one will hurt you while I'm breathing. The conviction in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like the first solid ground I'd found since Thursday night. Outside, the city continued its usual chaos, oblivious to how my entire world had shifted in the space of 3 days, and somewhere in that chaos, people were watching, waiting, planning moves in a game I'd just learned existed. Anthony's security team transformed my building overnight. 2 men stationed in the lobby, rotating shifts every 8 hours. Another parked across the street in a black SUV, engine running like a promise of quick response. Joseph coordinated everything with military precision, speaking into a radio earpiece in clipped phrases I couldn't decipher. I watched this mobilization from my 4th-floor window, coffee growing cold in my hands as dawn broke over the city. Sleep had been impossible after the threatening phone call. Every creak of the building settling, every distant siren, every footstep in the hallway sent my pulse racing. You should try to rest, Anthony said from behind me. He'd stayed the entire night, positioned in my single armchair while I'd lain rigid on the couch, too wired to even pretend sleep was possible. Joseph can handle the security arrangements. How do you do this? I turned to face him. He looked exactly as composed as he had hours ago. Not a wrinkle in his shirt, no exhaustion visible in those dark eyes. Live with this constant threat. You get used to it. The danger becomes background noise. He stood, stretching muscles that must have been cramped from hours in that chair. But I've been in this world my whole life. You haven't, which is why we need to move you somewhere more secure. I have a job, Anthony, a life. I can't just disappear. You can work remotely for a few days while we handle the Yamaguchi situation. Your gallery has internet, doesn't it? The casual dismissal of my concerns sparked anger through the fear. You don't get to decide how I live. No, but I get to decide how to keep you alive. His voice remained maddeningly calm. And keeping you here, in a building with broken locks and zero actual security, isn't an option I'm willing to consider. We argued in circles for another hour. I wanted autonomy, normalcy, my regular routine. He wanted me in a location he controlled, surrounded by people trained to handle threats I couldn't begin to understand. Finally, exhausted and terrified in equal measure, I agreed to see the safe house before making a decision. By 9 that morning, I was showered and dressed for work, applying makeup to hide the dark circles under my eyes. Brittany had texted 3 times already, asking about weekend plans. I stared at my phone, trying to figure out how to explain my situation without sounding completely insane. Ran into someone from my past, I finally typed. It's complicated. Rain check on drinks? Her response came immediately. Details required. Coffee at noon? Can't today. Work emergency. Call you tomorrow? The lie sat heavy on my conscience. But what was I supposed to say? My ex-boyfriend from high school runs a crime family and now Japanese gangsters are threatening me? She'd have me committed. At the gallery, I moved through the morning like a ghost. Marcus, one of the senior curators, caught me staring at the same Rothko canvas for 15 minutes without actually seeing it. You all right, Megan? You seem distracted. Just tired. Didn't sleep well. Well, wake up. Mrs. Ling is coming in at 2 to discuss her donation, and she'll notice if you're not fully present. Mrs. Liang. A major collector who'd been considering donating 3 pieces worth a combined $500,000 to our permanent collection. a meeting I'd been preparing for all month. The thought of sitting through negotiations while wondering if someone was watching through the gallery windows made my stomach clench. I lasted until 1:30 before calling in sick. My supervisor wasn't happy, but agreed to reschedule Mrs. Liang after I claimed food poisoning. Another lie. They were accumulating like interest on unpaid debt. Anthony picked me up 3 blocks from the gallery, paranoia making me walk the extra distance to avoid being seen leaving with him directly. Joseph drove while Anthony sat in back beside me, studying my face with concern I didn't want to acknowledge. You didn't have to leave work for this. Yes, I did. I couldn't concentrate knowing someone might be watching. I stared out the window at passing pedestrians, wondering if any of them were Yamaguchi's people. Show me this safe house. If it's as secure as you claim, maybe I can work remotely for a few days. The penthouse occupied the top floor of a converted warehouse in a part of Brooklyn I'd only driven through. From the outside, the building looked industrial and unremarkable. Inside was a different story entirely. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the East River, light flooding the open concept space with warmth despite the November chill outside. Modern furniture in neutral tones, a kitchen with appliances I'd only seen in magazine spreads, 2 bedrooms separated from the main area by frosted glass partitions. Art on the walls, actual pieces I recognized from contemporary artists whose work sold for 6 figures at auction. This is your idea of a safe house? I walked to the windows, taking in the view of Manhattan's skyline across the water. It's beautiful. It's secure, bulletproof glass, reinforced door with biometric locks, security cameras covering every approach. The building has 1 entrance and Joseph's team controls it. Anthony moved to stand beside me. Both of us reflected in the glass. You'll be comfortable here while we handle the situation. Handle it how? By making it clear that threats against you won't be tolerated. By reminding Yamaguchi that they have more to lose than gain by pushing this conflict. His reflection's jaw tightened. By doing what I should have done 8 years ago and protecting what matters. What matters? The phrase echoed in my head as I explored the space. A laptop sat on the dining table, already set up and connected to secure internet. The refrigerator was stocked with food I actually liked, which meant someone had researched my preferences. The bathroom contained toiletries in my preferred brands, down to the specific moisturizer I bought from a boutique in Manhattan. How long have you been planning this? Since Thursday night. I hoped we wouldn't need it, but I planned for contingencies. Anthony leaned against the kitchen counter, watching me take inventory. Joseph can bring clothes from your apartment. Make a list of what you need, and it'll be here within 2 hours. The reality settled over me like a heavy coat. This was happening. I was moving into a safe house owned by a man who ran a criminal organization, hiding from threats I barely understood, lying to everyone I knew about where I'd be. An irrational corner of my brain clung to the gallery like a lifeline. Disappearing without explanation would mean handing over years of work and letting someone else occupy the space I'd carved out for myself. I need to call my boss. Tell him I'll be working remotely for the rest of the week. Use your regular phone. We don't want to alert anyone that you've changed locations. Anthony pulled out his own device, typing something quickly. But be vague about the reason. Family emergency, personal issue, whatever sounds natural. The call took 5 minutes. My supervisor was annoyed but agreed, probably because I rarely took time off and had a good track record. When I hung up, the finality of my decision hit me like physical force. I'll need my laptop, work files, and enough clothes for at least a week. I started making a list, focusing on practical details to avoid thinking about larger implications. And I should tell Brittany something. She'll worry if I go silent. Tell her you're dealing with a family situation out of state. That you'll be in touch when you can. Anthony's voice softened. I know lying to your friends is difficult, but the less they know, the safer they are. By that evening, I was settled into the penthouse with everything I needed for an extended stay. My suitcase sat in the larger bedroom. Clothes hung in a closet that smelled of cedar. My laptop occupied the dining table. Gallery files downloaded and ready for remote work. Joseph had posted 2 guards in the building's lobby and another watching from across the street. Anthony had left an hour ago for what he called a business meeting. I tried not to think about what that meant in his world. Alone, I opened my laptop and typed Rossi Family New York into the search bar. Once again, The search results offered me almost nothing concrete to hold on to. Articles about Italian restaurants in the Bronx, a construction company specializing in commercial properties, import-export businesses with offices near the docks, society page photos from charity galas showing well-dressed people smiling for cameras. I clicked through image results until I found him. Anthony, maybe 2 years younger, standing at the edge of a group photo from some hospital fundraiser. He wore a tuxedo, holding a champagne flute, positioned as if he'd been about to leave when the photographer caught him. His expression was neutral, pleasant, but unrevealing. Other images showed similar scenes. Always at the periphery, never the focus. Other men who might have been associates or family members, but nothing explicitly criminal. Nothing that confirmed what he'd told me about his organization. The research told me nothing concrete but confirmed everything through its careful vagueness. People with legitimate businesses didn't have such meticulously scrubbed online presences. My phone rang just after 8. Unknown number. My finger hovered over decline before curiosity won. Hello? Miss Foster. The voice was cultured, accent placing its origins somewhere in Eastern Europe. I hope you're comfortable in your new accommodations. Ice shot through my veins. Who is this? A concerned party. Your sudden disappearance from your apartment has been noted. We're wondering if young Mr. Rossi has convinced you to accept his protection. I don't know what you're talking about. Please. We're all professionals here. You left your apartment this afternoon with a suitcase. You haven't returned, and Rossi's men are now stationed outside your building as if expecting someone. The man's tone remained pleasant, conversational. These are simple observations leading to obvious conclusions. My hand trembled so badly I nearly dropped the phone. What do you want? Just to deliver a message. Protection is only as good as the people providing it. And everyone has vulnerabilities. Even Anthony Rossi. The line went dead. I was dialing Anthony before my conscious mind made the decision. He answered on the first ring. Megan, what's wrong? Someone called again. Different voice, European accent. He knew I left my apartment, knew about the guards, knew I was with you. The words tumbled out in a rush. How do they know? How do they always know? I'm 10 minutes away. Lock the door. Don't let anyone in except me or Joseph. Background noise suggested he was already moving. Did he threaten you explicitly? He said protection only works if the people providing it don't have vulnerabilities. Then he hung up. Anthony's silence felt heavy. They're testing our response time, mapping our patterns. It's psychological warfare as much as actual threat. Is it working? Because I'm terrified. It's supposed to make you feel that way. Fear is their weapon when they can't reach you physically. His voice dropped lower, more intense. But you're safe where you are, Megan. That building is locked down. No one gets to you without going through people who are very good at their jobs. How long? How long do I have to live like this? Days, maybe a week. Just until we make our position clear and they decide the cost isn't worth the goal. After we hung up, I stood at the windows watching the city lights reflect off the river. Somewhere out there, people I couldn't see were watching me, planning moves in a game I didn't understand. And somewhere else, Anthony was doing the same from his side of the board. 20 minutes later, a key turned in the lock. I jumped despite expecting it, heart pounding until Anthony's voice called out. It's me. Joseph's doing a security check. He looked different than earlier. Same expensive clothes, but his composure had cracked slightly, stress visible in the tight line of his shoulders. When his eyes found me standing by the windows, something that might have been relief crossed his face. Show me your phone. I handed it over without question. He studied the screen, scrolling through recent calls, then pocketed the device. Hey, I need that. They're tracking it. Not necessarily hacking the phone itself, but they have someone inside your carrier, or they've bribed someone who can access call logs. He pulled out a different device, smaller and sleeker. Use this instead. It's encrypted, routed through servers they can't trace. Your number will forward to it automatically. So now I'm using burner phones like a drug dealer. You're using secure communications like someone being targeted by professionals. He set my original phone on the counter. We'll leave that here, powered on, so they think you're still carrying it. Let them waste resources monitoring a device that tells them nothing. Joseph appeared in the doorway, nodding once at Anthony before speaking. Building is clean. No signs of surveillance equipment, no vehicles watching that weren't already cleared. Our people are in position. Good. Double the lobby rotation. I want fresh eyes every 4 hours, not 8. After Joseph left, Anthony moved to the couch, finally allowing exhaustion to show in the way he sank into the cushions. I remained by the windows, maintaining distance while trying to process everything. You should eat something, he said after a long silence. There's food in the kitchen. I'm not hungry. You need to maintain your energy. Fear burns calories faster than running. Despite myself, I smiled slightly. Is that something they teach in mob boss school? My father used to say it, usually right before a long negotiation where neither side wanted to blink first. He looked up at me, shadows under his eyes more pronounced in the lamplight. Come sit down, Megan. Staring out the window isn't going to make this resolve faster. I moved to the armchair across from him, curling my legs beneath me. Tell me about high school. The parts I didn't see. The request surprised him. Why? Because I need to remember who you were before all this. Before the family and the threats and the security teams. I met his gaze directly. Help me see the boy I fell in love with underneath the man you became. Something in his expression softened. What do you want to know? Everything. Start with the first time you noticed me. He leaned back, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. Sophomore year, October. You were in the library researching something for history class. Books spread across an entire table. Your hair was longer then, always falling in your face when you leaned over to take notes. You'd tuck it behind your ear every 30 seconds. This unconscious gesture that drove me crazy because I wanted to be the one doing it. The memory surfaced. Hazy, but present. I felt someone watching me that day. I looked up once and saw you by the biography section. You waved. Like it was perfectly natural that a sophomore would acknowledge a senior she'd never spoken to. Most people pretended I didn't exist because they knew my family's reputation, even if they didn't understand the details. I didn't know about your family then. Exactly. You saw me. Not the name or the implications. Just Anthony, who happened to be in the library at the same time. He paused, memory clearly playing behind his eyes. I asked you out 3 weeks later. Took me that long to work up the courage. You brought me flowers from the corner store. Carnations because you said roses were pretentious. I didn't have money for roses. My father gave me an allowance, but I was saving everything I could. Planning for college. Planning for a future where maybe I could escape the family business. His laugh held no humor. Naive 17-year-old dreams. We talked for hours as the city lights outside blurred together. He told me about sneaking out of family dinners to call me, about lying to his father about where he spent his Friday nights. I shared memories I'd buried, our first kiss in the empty gym after a basketball game, the way he'd held my hand like it was something precious. I wanted to take you to Bella Note back then, he admitted as midnight approached. It was this place near school, fancy but not intimidating. I used to walk past it and imagine bringing you there for a proper date, but I couldn't afford it on what I was making at my father's warehouse. So you bought it years later. I bought it 5 years ago when the original owner retired. Renovated it, kept the name, made it exactly what I'd imagined. His eyes held mine. I always planned to bring you there eventually. I just didn't think it would take 8 years. The weight of lost time settled between us. 8 years we could have had if circumstances had been different, if his world hadn't been so dangerous, if he'd been anyone else. I should let you sleep, Anthony said finally, standing. Tomorrow we'll figure out the work situation. Make sure you can access everything you need from the gallery remotely. You're leaving? Joseph's team is here. You're safe. I know. But I hesitated, unsure how to articulate what I wanted. Could you stay? Just for tonight. I don't want to be alone with my thoughts. He studied my face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I'll take the other bedroom. Thank you. Later. Lying in the unfamiliar bed with sounds of the city muted by bulletproof glass, I heard him moving in the adjacent room. The knowledge of his presence, solid and protective just beyond the wall, eased something in my chest that had been tight since the first threatening call. This wasn't how I'd imagined reconnecting with my first love. But then again, nothing about Anthony Rossi had ever been what I expected. And somehow, despite the danger and the fear and the complete upheaval of my careful life, I was beginning to remember why I'd loved him in the first place. Days blurred together in the penthouse, each one bleeding into the next, until I lost track of whether it was Tuesday or Friday. The security routine became familiar background noise. Joseph's team rotating shifts in the lobby, check-ins through the encrypted phone Anthony had given me, the low hum of surveillance equipment I pretended not to notice. I established a workspace at the dining table, laptop surrounded by files downloaded from the gallery's server. Video calls with my team became the new normal, my supervisor thankfully accepting my vague explanations about a family situation requiring extended time away. The contemporary exhibition opened without me physically present for the first time in my career. Marcus sent photos of the installation, collectors mingling among pieces I'd curated from hundreds of miles away, emotionally, if not geographically. "You're frowning at that screen like it personally offended you," Anthony said from the kitchen, where he was unpacking containers from some restaurant whose name I couldn't pronounce. I closed the laptop with more force than necessary. Mrs. Liang withdrew her donation offer. 3 pieces worth $500,000. Gone because I wasn't there to close the deal personally. That's a significant loss for the gallery. It's my job falling apart while I hide from threats I still barely understand. I rubbed my temples where a headache had been building since my supervisor's disappointed email an hour ago. How long am I supposed to live like this? Anthony set plates on the counter, dividing food between them with careful precision. Joseph met with Yamaguchi representatives yesterday. They're considering our terms for backing off. Considering isn't the same as agreeing. No, but it's progress. He carried both plates to the table, setting one in front of me. The aroma of garlic and herbs cut through my frustration despite my determination to stay angry. "You need to eat. Skipping meals won't speed up negotiations." I had coffee this morning. Coffee isn't food. He sat across from me, the same position he'd taken every evening for the past week. Dinner had become our routine, the 1 hour where we pretended this was a normal life, instead of protective custody with expensive furniture. I picked at the pasta, twirling noodles around my fork without bringing them to my mouth. "Tell me something real. Something about your life that isn't business or threats or family politics. What do you want to know? What it's like being you. Running an empire at 28. Having that much power, that much responsibility." I finally took a bite, the flavors exploding across my tongue in ways that made my frustration seem petty. "Does it ever feel like too much?" His expression shifted, walls lowering just enough for me to glimpse what lay beneath the control. "Every single day. My father groomed me for this from the time I could walk, but nothing prepares you for the weight of it. Every decision affects hundreds of people, their families, their futures. One mistake, and people die or go to prison or lose everything. That sounds exhausting. It's suffocating." He set his fork down, attention fully on me instead of the food. "There's no one I can talk to, honestly, except Joseph. And even with him, there are limits. Everyone wants something, needs something, expects something. The loneliness of power is real, Megan. You're surrounded by people every second, but completely alone in ways that matter." The vulnerability in his admission made my chest tighten. This was the Anthony I remembered, the one who'd told me his fears during late-night phone calls when we were 17, before his world demanded he become someone harder. What about friends? People you trust outside the organization? There's no outside for people like me. Everyone in my life is connected to the family in some way. Friendships are strategic alliances. Relationships are political calculations. Until you walked back into my world, I hadn't had a genuine conversation with someone in years. I'm part of your world now, too, whether I chose it or not. But you see me as I was, not just as I am. You remember when I was just Anthony, not the boss or the heir or the name that makes people nervous. His hand moved across the table, stopping just short of touching mine. That's worth more than you know. We finished dinner in comfortable silence, the kind that only exists between people who've known each other long enough that words become optional. Anthony cleared the plates while I returned to my laptop, reviewing proposals for the spring exhibition, even though my concentration was fractured. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked suddenly. "Taking over the family, choosing this life." He paused at the sink, back to me, shoulders tense. "I didn't choose it. The life chose me the moment I was born into my father's world. But regret implies wishing for an alternative. And every path I didn't take would have meant losing you in some other way. You lost me anyway. 8 years apart is losing me. No. Losing you would be you being dead because I was too selfish to let you go when staying meant making you a target. He turned to face me, water dripping from his hands he'd forgotten to dry. What I did was set you free at the cost of my own happiness. That's not loss, Megan. That's sacrifice. The distinction landed heavy. I'd spent years hating him for abandoning me, but he'd spent those same years watching from a distance, ensuring I was safe while denying himself any possibility of his own contentment. Tomorrow night, I want to try something, he said, changing the subject with deliberate intent. My grandmother's recipe for homemade pasta. She taught me before she died, and I haven't made it in years. You cook? When I have time and the right company. Which I haven't had much of either lately. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Say yes. Let me do something normal that isn't about protection or threats or the world outside these windows. How could I refuse when he asked like that? Like my agreement mattered more than strategic decisions worth millions. Yes, I'd like that. The next evening, Anthony appeared with bags of ingredients and a determination that would have been amusing if it wasn't so endearing. He'd rolled his sleeves to his elbows, revealing forearms I tried very hard not to stare at, while he set out flour, eggs, olive oil, and salt on the pristine marble counter. My grandmother was from Tuscany, he explained, measuring flour into a volcano shape on the counter. She came to New York at 16, barely speaking English, married my grandfather within a year. She taught me that food is love made tangible. That's beautiful. She was beautiful, in her 80s when she died, but still commanding respect from everyone who met her. He cracked eggs into the flour well with practiced efficiency. She used to say that any man who couldn't feed his woman wasn't worth keeping. Smart woman. She would have liked you. You have the same fire she did. The same refusal to accept less than honesty. He talked me through the process, his hands demonstrating while I tried to replicate the movements. Mixing the dough, kneading until the texture transformed from rough to silky, letting it rest while we prepared the sauce. We worked side by side in the kitchen, our movements falling into unexpected rhythm. Flour dusted every surface by the time we started rolling the dough. I'd gotten it on my shirt, my jeans, probably my face, though I hadn't checked a mirror. Anthony had some on his forearms, white powder stark against his olive skin. You missed a spot, he said, reaching toward my face. His thumb brushed my cheekbone, supposedly removing flour but lingering longer than necessary. The touch sent electricity through my nervous system, every nerve suddenly hyper-aware of his proximity. I looked up at him, finding his dark eyes already focused on my mouth. The air between us shifted, charged with tension that had been building for days. His hand cupped my face, thumb tracing patterns against my skin that had nothing to do with cleaning away flour. Megan, he said softly. My name both question and prayer. I tilted my face up, closing the distance between us incrementally. His breath ghosted across my lips, warm and smelling faintly of the wine we'd been sipping while cooking. Another inch and we'd be kissing, crossing a line we'd been dancing around since the moment he'd sat down across from me at Bella Knot. The intercom buzzed, harsh and intrusive in the charged silence. Anthony's jaw clenched, frustration clear as he pulled back slightly. I need to answer that. He moved to the panel by the door, thumb pressing the button with barely controlled irritation. What is it? Boss, we have movement from Yamaguchi. Joseph's voice crackled through the speaker. Nothing threatening but worth discussing. Can you meet downstairs? 5 minutes. Anthony turned back to me, running a hand through his hair and leaving flower streaks I found absurdly attractive. I'm sorry. This can't wait. I understand. Go handle whatever you need to handle. After he left, I stood in the kitchen surrounded by pasta dough and unfulfilled tension, wondering if the universe was conspiring against us or simply testing how much I actually wanted this. The almost kiss replayed in my mind, my body still humming with anticipation that had nowhere to go. I cleaned the kitchen mechanically, putting away ingredients and wiping down counters while trying to process the tangle of emotions in my chest. Wanting Anthony felt both inevitable and terrifying, like standing at the edge of a cliff knowing the fall would either destroy me or teach me to fly. The encrypted phone buzzed. Brittany's name appeared on the screen. The contact transferred from my original device. "Finally," she said when I answered. "You've been ghosting me for a week." I was about to file a missing person report. "I'm sorry. Things have been complicated." "Complicated how?" "And don't give me vague excuses." "I know you, Meg. Something's seriously wrong." I hesitated, weighing how much to tell her. But Brittany had been my closest friend for 5 years, had held my hair when I was sick, had celebrated every small victory in my career. She deserved more than lies. "Can you come over?" "I'll explain everything in person." "Where's over?" "You're not at your apartment." "No, I'm somewhere safe. I'll text you the address." 2 hours later, Brittany stood in the penthouse doorway, eyes wide as she took in the space. She wore yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt, her blonde hair pulled into a messy bun, looking completely out of place among the expensive furniture and art. "Holy hell, Megan. When you said somewhere safe, I didn't expect a palace." She walked to the windows, staring at the Manhattan skyline across the river. "What is this place? And please tell me it's not what I think it is." "What do you think it is?" "Anthony Rossi's property. That he's keeping you here as some kind of prisoner." "Not a prisoner. Protected." I gestured for her to sit on the couch, settling beside her. "Remember how I told you I saw him? It's gotten more complicated since then." I explained everything. The threatening calls, the Yamaguchi organization, the security team, the reality of Anthony's world. Brittany listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from concern to alarm to something close to horror. "You're in protective custody from the Japanese Mafia because you had dinner with your high school boyfriend who turns out to run a crime family." She said it flatly, like stating facts might make them less insane. "Megan, do you hear how crazy that sounds? I'm living it. Believe me, I know how it sounds. And you're just okay with this. Hiding here, letting him control your life, playing house with someone who's admitted to tracking you for 8 years. It's not like that. He's not controlling me. He's keeping me safe from people who made me a target for being seen with him." I heard the defensiveness in my voice and didn't try to hide it. "And yes, the tracking is weird, but he never interfered. He just needed to know I was alive." Brittany studied my face with the intensity of someone searching for signs of brainwashing. "You have feelings for him again. Or still. However that works after 8 years. Maybe. I don't know." The lie felt obvious, even to my own ears. "It's complicated. Everything about this is complicated. The question is whether it's dangerously complicated or just messy complicated." She took my hand, squeezing gently. "I trust your judgment, Meg. But I also know you have terrible taste in men who need rescuing. Please tell me this isn't another Ryan situation where you're confusing intensity for love. Anthony is nothing like Ryan. Ryan needed constant validation, constant attention, constant reassurance that he was the center of my universe. Anthony is the opposite. He's self-sufficient, competent, willing to walk away if I asked him to. Would he, though? Walk away if you asked? I thought about his words from the night at Bellinat. Yes, he would. He already did once when he thought it was necessary. Brittany didn't look convinced, but nodded slowly. "Okay. If you trust him, I'll try to trust your judgment. But you need to promise me something." "What?" "If this goes bad, if he becomes someone you need protection from instead of protection by, you call me immediately. No hesitation, no trying to fix it yourself. Promise." I promise. We talked for another hour. Brittany filling me in on gallery gossip and mutual friends asking where I'd disappeared to. The normalcy of her presence grounded me in ways the past week hadn't allowed. By the time Joseph appeared to escort her out, she'd extracted promises that I'd text daily and consider having an exit strategy if things escalated further. "He seems intense," she said at the door, glancing at where Anthony stood near the kitchen, having returned while we were talking. "But he looks at you like you're the only person in the room. That's either really romantic or really obsessive. I'm hoping for romantic." "Me too, babe. Me too." After she left, the penthouse felt simultaneously more spacious and more intimate. Anthony had given us privacy during the visit, occupying himself with work in the second bedroom. Now he emerged, loosening his tie as he approached where I stood by the windows. "Your friend doesn't trust me. She doesn't know you. She just knows what I've told her, which admittedly sounds insane from the outside. It is insane. Everything about this situation defies normal relationship progression. He stopped beside me. Both of us reflected in the darkened glass. For what it's worth, I'm glad you have someone who looks out for you. Everyone needs a Brittany. Who's your Brittany? Who keeps you grounded? Joseph, in his way. But it's different when you're in charge. People defer to you even when you need them to challenge you. I turned to face him properly, suddenly tired of the careful distance we'd been maintaining. Earlier, before Joseph interrupted, we were about to kiss. We were. Why didn't you come back to finish what we started? His expression shifted, vulnerability showing through the cracks in his composure. Because I'm terrified of rushing this and destroying whatever chance we have. I walked away from you once, Megan. I'm not arrogant enough to think I'd survive doing it again, even if circumstances forced it. What if I don't want to wait? What if 8 years apart was enough waiting for both of us? Before he could respond, before I could second-guess the impulse, I closed the distance between us and kissed him. My hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer while his surprise held him frozen for half a second before he responded. His arms came around me, one hand splaying across my lower back while the other cupped the base of my skull. The kiss was everything I'd remembered, and nothing like it at the same time. Familiar and foreign, gentle and desperate, years of longing compressed into a single moment of connection. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. We should slow down, he said, even as his hands remained firm on my waist. Do this right. Take our time. We've had 8 years of taking our time, and I want more than 8 days with you, which means not rushing something that deserves patience. He pulled back slightly, enough to meet my eyes. I want to court you properly, Megan. Dinners and conversations and building something that lasts beyond the immediate crisis. Can you give me that? The request was so unexpected, so old-fashioned and genuine, that I felt my resistance crumbling. This wasn't rejection. This was him valuing what we were building over immediate gratification. Okay, we'll do this right. Whatever that means. His smile transformed his face, making him look younger, more like the boy I'd loved at 17. Thank you. That night, lying in bed listening to him move around in the adjacent room, I recognized the truth I'd been avoiding. I'd never stopped loving Anthony Rossi. 8 years, distance, anger, fear, none of it had erased the fundamental connection between us. And now, trapped in this strange limbo of protection and proximity, I was choosing to let myself feel it fully. Whatever came next, whoever threatened us from the outside, we'd face it together. Because some things were worth the risk, and loving him had always been the most dangerous, worthwhile thing I'd ever done. The morning Joseph arrived with news, I was reviewing gallery proposals at the dining table, coffee cooling beside my laptop. Anthony had left before dawn for what he called routine business, but the tension in his shoulders told a different story. Now Joseph stood in the doorway, his usually composed face drawn tight. Boss needs to see you. It's about his father. 10 minutes later, Anthony sat across from me in the penthouse office, a manila folder spread before him. His hands were steady, but something in his eyes had fractured. My father didn't die of a heart attack. The words emerged flat, drained of emotion. Joseph's contact found medical records that were buried. Arsenic poisoning, administered over 6 months, slow enough to mimic natural decline. My stomach dropped. Who would do that? Someone close. Someone trusted. He pushed a photograph across the desk. An older man, maybe 60, with silver hair and a face that belonged in family portraits. Silvio Fioraldi. He's been with the family for 30 years. My father's consigliere, his most trusted advisor. The betrayal in his voice cut deeper than any physical wound. How do you know it was him? Bank records showing payments from Yamaguchi. Phone logs placing him at my father's home on days the medication was administered. And now there's an informant willing to testify to what he saw. Anthony's jaw clenched. I need to go to Newark today. Meet with this person. Get physical evidence before Silvio realizes we know. When do we leave? His eyes snapped to mine. You're not coming. It's too dangerous. More dangerous than sitting here alone while someone who poisoned your father is still walking free? I leaned forward. I'm not fragile, Anthony. And I'm not staying behind wondering if you're coming back. The argument lasted 20 minutes. He wanted me safe, protected, insulated from the ugliness of his world. I refused to be hidden away like some possession that might break. Finally, exhaustion and grudging respect won. You stay with Joseph every second. If I say move, you move. No questions, no delays. Agreed. We left an hour later in a black Lexus, Joseph driving while rain hammered the windshield. The city gave way to industrial sprawl, warehouses and truck depots lining highways slick with November weather. Anthony sat beside me in back, silent, except for occasional instructions to Joseph in Italian. The meeting place was a warehouse on the edge of Newark's Port District. Rusted metal siding, broken windows covered with plywood, the kind of building people avoided after dark. Joseph parked behind a shipping container, engine running in case we needed a fast exit. Inside, the air smelled of motor oil and damp concrete. Our contact waited near a makeshift desk, a Russian in his 50s, with a face that had seen too many fights. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. I have what you need. Photographs, bank statements, video footage from Silvio's phone that he thought was deleted. He slid a thick envelope across the scarred desk surface. Payment first. Anthony handed over cash without counting it. The Russian nodded, satisfied, and disappeared into shadows that seemed to swallow him whole. The evidence was damning. Clear photographs of medication bottles, time-stamped images showing Silvio administering pills to an increasingly frail man I recognized from society page photos as Anthony's father. Bank transfers with dates matching each administration. My hands shook holding the papers. We need to go, Joseph said from his position by the door. Now. We'd just reached the car when headlights flooded the space. 2 black SUVs blocked our exit, doors opening to release men in dark clothes with weapons drawn. My heart seized. Get down! Anthony shoved me to the floor behind the passenger seat, his body covering mine as glass exploded above us. The world compressed to gunfire and the sharp smell of cordite in Anthony's weight, pressing me flat against leather that smelled of fear. Joseph returned fire from the driver's seat, his movements economical and precise. Anthony barked orders in Italian, one hand keeping my head down, while the other aimed through the shattered window. 3 shots. 4. The sound deafening in the enclosed space. In the chaos, something caught my eye. Anthony's phone had fallen, screen illuminated with a message notification. My angle let me read it before the screen went dark. A text from weeks ago. A name I didn't recognize offering an alliance through marriage to someone's daughter. Anthony's response was a single word. No. He'd refused an arranged marriage that could have strengthened his position, because he was waiting for me. The realization hit harder than any bullet. Joseph gunned the engine, ramming one SUV hard enough to create an opening. Metal shrieked against metal as we crashed through, back window shattering completely. Cold air and rain poured in as we accelerated onto the highway, leaving destruction behind. Everyone intact? Joseph's voice was steady despite the white knuckles gripping the wheel. Megan? Anthony pulled back enough to see my face, hands checking for injuries with professional efficiency. Are you hurt? I'm fine. Terrified, but fine. My voice shook despite my best efforts. What about you? Blood seeped through his shirt sleeve, darkening the fabric. Just a graze. I've had worse. We didn't stop until we were back in Brooklyn. Pulling into a private garage beneath a building Joseph assured me was secure. A doctor appeared within minutes, an older woman who asked no questions as she cleaned and stitched Anthony's arm with practiced hands. Back in the penthouse, adrenaline gave way to trembling I couldn't control. I sat on the couch, hands shaking so badly I couldn't hold the glass of water Anthony pressed into them. He knelt before me, steadying my hands with his. I should never have brought you. This was a mistake. No. The word came out stronger than I felt. This is your reality. If we're going to have any chance, I need to understand what that means. No more protection through ignorance. Something shifted in his expression, pride mixing with pain. You're stronger than I gave you credit for. I'm not strong. I'm terrified. But I'm also not leaving. I met his eyes directly. Those men weren't trying to scare us. They were trying to kill you and take me. One of the attackers survived. Joseph's team has him now." Anthony's voice dropped lower. "He'll tell us who gave the orders. And when he does, we'll know exactly how deep Silvio's betrayal runs. The interrogation happened in a location I wasn't allowed to know about. Details Joseph shared only after it was finished." The wounded man confirmed everything. Silvio had been working with Yamaguchi for over a year, planning to eliminate Anthony and take control of the family's operations. Taking me was meant to force Anthony's hand, make him vulnerable through the one weakness everyone now knew existed. "What happens next?" I asked, when Anthony returned that evening. Exhaustion carved into every line of his face. "I call a meeting of the family. Present the evidence to the council. Let them see what Silvio did." He sank onto the couch beside me, head falling back against the cushions. "My father built everything on loyalty and honor. Silvio destroyed that with poison and lies. Will they believe you? The evidence speaks for itself. And Joseph has 3 witnesses willing to testify to what they saw. Transactions they processed, conversations they overheard." His hand found mine, squeezing gently. "But it means war. Yamaguchi won't accept losing their inside man without retaliation. Then we deal with that when it comes." I turned to face him fully. "Right now, we focus on exposing the truth and getting justice for your father." His eyes searched my face, looking for something I couldn't name. "When did you become so brave?" "When I realized running wouldn't protect me any better than staying. At least here, I'm with someone who'd rather die than let me be harmed." I reached up to touch his face, fingers tracing the sharp line of his jaw. "I saw the message on your phone. The arranged marriage proposal you refused." He stilled. "That wasn't meant for you to see. But I did. And it made me understand something. You weren't just waiting for me out of nostalgia or guilt. You actually believed we could find our way back to each other." "I did. I do." His hand covered mine where it rested against his face. "Every decision I've made for the past 2 years has been about building something strong enough to protect you when I finally found you again. The alliances I formed, the territory I secured, the power I consolidated, all of it was preparation for this." "For what?" "For keeping you safe in a world that will always be dangerous. For giving you a life where you never have to hide or run or apologize for loving someone like me." He turned his head to press a kiss against my palm. "I know I have no right to ask this, but I need to know. Is there a version of our future where you can accept what I am and choose to stay anyway?" The question hung between us, weighted with implications that would shape everything going forward. I thought about the past weeks, the fear and violence and constant threat, but I also thought about the man beneath the reputation, the one who'd protected me without asking anything in return, who'd waited 8 years on the slim hope of a second chance. "Yes," I said simply. "There is. We're already living it." Relief transformed his face, years of tension releasing in a single exhaled breath. He pulled me close, arms wrapping around me with desperate gratitude. We sat like that for a long time, 2 people who'd found their way back through circumstances that should have destroyed any possibility of connection. Outside, the city continued its endless motion, oblivious to the quiet revolution happening in a Brooklyn penthouse. Somewhere in that vast urban sprawl, Silvio Fioraldi still moved freely, unaware that his betrayal had been discovered and documented. And somewhere else, Yamaguchi's people were planning their next move, calculating odds in a game where we'd just changed all the rules. But in that moment, none of it mattered as much as the steady rhythm of Anthony's heartbeat beneath my ear and the certainty that whatever came next, we would face it together. The boy I'd loved at 17 had grown into a man I was choosing all over again, not despite his darkness, but with full understanding of what that choice meant. And for the first time since walking into Bellanotte and finding a ring in my drink, I felt something that might have been peace. The night after the ambush, sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw shattered glass and muzzle flashes, felt Anthony's weight crushing the air from my lungs as bullets tore through metal around us. I lay in the darkness listening to him move restlessly in the adjacent room, both of us trapped in separate replays of violence neither could shake. Around 3 a.m, I gave up pretending and found him standing at the windows, silhouette sharp against city lights. His injured arm hung carefully at his side, white bandage visible beneath his rolled sleeve. Can't sleep either, I asked softly. He turned, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. Every time I close my eyes, I see you in that car with bullets coming through the glass. I see 100 ways you could have died because I was stupid enough to bring you into a war zone. I'm alive. We both are. I crossed to stand beside him, our reflections ghost-like in the dark glass. What happens now? Joseph interrogated the wounded attacker for 6 hours. He confirmed everything we suspected. Anthony's voice was hollow. Silvio orchestrated the ambush. He knew we were meeting the informant, knew the route we'd take. He has people inside my organization feeding him information. The betrayal ran deeper than I'd imagined. How is that possible? I thought you controlled everything. I control the major operations, the territory, the alliances, but the family has hundreds of soldiers, associates, people connected through decades of relationships I inherited when my father died. His hand clenched against the window frame. Silvio was my father's consigliere. People are loyal to him out of respect for what he represented. Now I have to prove he's a traitor without creating a civil war. The evidence you collected will only matter if I present it correctly. There's protocol, structure, ways these things are done. He finally looked at me directly. Tomorrow I'm calling a formal meeting of the family council. Every captain, every made man who matters. I'll lay out the evidence and let them judge. And if they don't believe you, then I'll have bigger problems than Yamaguchi. Morning arrived too quickly. Anthony left before dawn with Joseph and 3 other men whose names I didn't know. The penthouse felt cavernous in his absence, every shadow potentially threatening now that I understood how easily violence could erupt. I tried to work, opening my laptop to review gallery emails, but concentration was impossible. Around noon, Joseph returned alone. Boss wants you to know the meeting is underway. He'll call when it's finished. His expression gave nothing away. In the meantime, I'm supposed to keep you occupied and safe. How long will it take? Hours. These things don't rush. He moved to the kitchen, filling the espresso machine with practiced efficiency. You hungry? I make decent carbonara when I'm not busy shooting people. Despite everything, I almost smiled. You cook? My mother insisted all her sons learn. Said women weren't servants, and any man who couldn't feed himself deserved to starve. He measured pasta into boiling water. Boss is the same way. His grandmother taught him everything about food and family before she died. We ate in comfortable silence, Joseph's presence surprisingly calming, despite his profession. He told stories about Anthony as a younger man, reckless and idealistic, trying to change a system that had existed for generations. He wanted out once, Joseph admitted, finishing his wine. Right after his father brought him fully into the business. He had this plan to go to college, study law, become legitimate. But then the Castellano situation happened and everything changed. What situation? Family war. Territory dispute that got bloody fast. Anthony's father needed him. And he stepped up because that's who he is. Been stepping up ever since. Even when it costs him everything he wanted. Joseph's eyes found mine. Including you. He told me about the letter, about forcing you away 8 years ago. Nearly destroyed him writing those words. The revelation landed heavy. He never told me that part. He wouldn't. Boss doesn't do vulnerability well with most people. Joseph stood clearing plates. But with you, he's different. More human. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. The family needs him human, not just the machine his father tried to make him. 4 hours passed before my encrypted phone finally rang. Anthony's voice came through rough with exhaustion. It's done. Silvio has been formally expelled from the family. The council voted unanimously after seeing the evidence. Relief flooded through me. That's good, right? It's progress. But expulsion isn't execution. Silvio is still alive, still connected to Yamaguchi, still dangerous. Papers rustled in the background. I'm coming home. We need to talk about next steps. He arrived an hour later, suit rumpled, tie loosened, looking like he'd aged a decade in a single day. But when his eyes found me, something in his expression eased. Tell me everything, I said, guiding him to the couch. The meeting had been brutal. Hours of presenting evidence, answering challenges, defending his investigation against men who'd known Silvio for decades. but the proof was undeniable. Medical records, bank statements, witness testimony from the Russian informant who'd appeared via video link. By the end, even Silvio's oldest allies had turned against him. What about Yamaguchi? That's more complicated. Losing Silvio weakens their position significantly, but they won't back down without negotiation. Anthony ran a hand through his hair, disheveling it further. Joseph is arranging a sit-down with their leadership. Neutral territory, mediators present. We'll propose terms for peace, and if they refuse, then we prepare for war. He said it matter-of-factly, as if discussing dinner plans rather than potential violence. But I don't think they will. They're pragmatic. They wanted leverage over me through Silvio and through you. Both those options are gone now. Continuing the conflict costs them more than they'll gain. I processed this, trying to understand the cold calculations that governed his world. When does this happen? 3 days. Gives both sides time to prepare positions, gather their people. His hand found mine, squeezing gently. You'll stay here with security doubled. I won't risk them trying something desperate before the meeting. I want to help. There has to be something I can do besides hide and wait. Anthony was quiet for a long moment, considering. Actually, there might be. You mentioned you have contacts in the art world, people who track expensive purchases and money movement through galleries. My boss knows everyone in that space. Why? Because Silvio has been laundering money through art purchases for years. If we can track those purchases, trace the sales back to specific buyers, we might find additional evidence linking him to Yamaguchi. He pulled up his phone, scrolling through documents. Joseph found gallery receipts in Silvio's financial records. Pieces worth hundreds of thousands bought and sold through private dealers. My expertise finally had practical application in his world. Give me the names of the galleries and approximate dates. I can make calls, use professional connections to trace the transactions without raising suspicions. For the next 2 hours, we worked together at the dining table, Anthony providing information while I contacted gallery directors, curators, private dealers. My professional reputation opened doors that would have slammed shut for anyone obviously connected to organized crime. By evening, I'd traced 5 major purchases directly back to a shell corporation registered in Tokyo, with known ties to Yamaguchi. This is solid, Anthony said, reviewing my notes. Financial evidence they can't deny. Between what we already have and this, their position at the negotiation table just got significantly weaker. Pride swelled in my chest. Ridiculous under the circumstances, but undeniable. I helped. You did more than help. You gave us leverage that could prevent this from escalating into open warfare. He pulled me close, arms wrapping around me with careful pressure that avoided his injured shoulder. Thank you. That night, after dinner and wine and long silences filled with unspoken understanding, Anthony walked me to my bedroom door. We'd maintained separate spaces since the kiss in the kitchen. His determination to do things right holding firm despite obvious attraction pulling us together. But tonight felt different. The adrenaline crash after the ambush, the emotional weight of exposing Silvio's betrayal, the recognition that we'd become partners in ways that transcended romance. All of it created pressure that demanded release. Stay, I said softly, my hand on his chest, feeling his heartbeat accelerate. Not for anything except not being alone. I don't want to be alone tonight. His internal struggle was visible. Propriety warring with desire. Finally, he nodded. Just to stay. Nothing more. We lay together on top of the covers, fully clothed, his arms around me while my head rested on his uninjured shoulder. No kissing, no escalation. Just 2 people who'd survived too much finding comfort in proximity. I love you, he whispered into the darkness. I need you to know that. Whatever happens with the negotiation, with Yamaguchi, with any of this, I love you exactly as you are. The words unlocked something in my chest that had been locked since he'd disappeared 8 years ago. I love you too. I think I never stopped, just buried it deep enough that I could function. His arms tightened fractionally. After the sit-down, when things settle, I want to do this properly. Court you the way I should have when we were 17. Dates and flowers and asking permission instead of assumptions. I'd like that. We fell asleep like that, wrapped together, fully clothed, vulnerability and trust replacing the passion we'd denied ourselves. Outside, the city moved through its rhythms, police sirens and car horns, and the distant thrum of humanity that never truly rested. And somewhere in that vast urban sprawl, forces were aligning for a meeting that would determine whether the violence ended or escalated beyond our control. But in that moment, safe in Anthony's arms with his heartbeat steady beneath my ear, I chose to believe we'd survive whatever came next. Because we'd already survived the impossible. Finding our way back to each other after 8 years of distance and damage, everything else was just details. The council meeting took place 3 days later in a private room at one of the family's legitimate businesses, an Italian restaurant in the Bronx that had been serving red sauce and keeping secrets for 40 years. Anthony left before dawn, dressed in the dark suit he reserved for formal family business, his face already set in the controlled mask I'd come to recognize as his public persona. "Stay with Joseph," he said at the door, pressing a kiss to my forehead. "Don't leave the building for any reason. We don't know how Silvio will react when he realizes what's happening." By noon, my nerves were frayed from waiting. I paced the penthouse, unable to focus on work or reading or anything that required sustained attention. Joseph made coffee I didn't drink and offered reassurances I couldn't believe. The call finally came at 3:15. Anthony's voice was tight with controlled emotion. "It's done. The council voted unanimously to expel Silvio from the family. He's been stripped of rank, protection, and all claims to territory or operations." What does that mean in practical terms? It means he's nobody. An outcast. Anyone who helps him becomes an outcast as well. Papers rustled in the background. The evidence was undeniable. When the council saw the video of him administering poison to my father, saw the bank transfers, heard the testimony, even his closest allies turned on him. Relief flooded through me so intensely my knees went weak. So it's over? The internal threat is neutralized. But Yamaguchi is another problem. His voice dropped lower. Losing Silvio weakens their position significantly. Joseph is arranging a sit-down for tomorrow evening. Neutral territory. Mediators from families we both respect present to ensure neither side tries anything stupid. What are the terms you're proposing? They withdraw completely from the contested port territory. In exchange, I don't retaliate for the ambush or for their involvement in my father's death. Clean slate, mutual respect, no future interference in each other's operations. Will they accept? They'd be smart to. But pride makes people irrational. He paused. "I'll be home in 2 hours. There are things we need to discuss before tomorrow." When he finally walked through the door, exhaustion and victory warred on his face. He moved directly to the bar, pouring himself 2 fingers of whiskey he downed in a single swallow before turning to face me. "How bad was it?" "Brutal." Silvio tried to defend himself, claimed the evidence was fabricated, that I was staging a coup using my father's death as justification. Anthony poured another measure but didn't drink it immediately. But the medical examiner's report was official, stamped and signed. The bank records came from government sources Joseph's contacts accessed legally. There was no denying what he'd done. How did the council react? Old Guard was devastated. These were men who'd worked beside Silvio for decades, trusted him with their lives and businesses. Younger members were furious, demanding immediate execution rather than just expulsion. He finally took a sip of the whiskey, rolling it over his tongue. I had to remind everyone that we're not savages. We have codes, procedures. Exile serves the same purpose without making us murderers. I crossed to him, taking the glass from his hand and setting it aside before pulling him into an embrace. His arms came around me immediately, holding tight enough that breathing required effort. "I'm proud of you," I whispered against his chest. "You did the right thing. The hard thing. Doesn't feel like victory. My father is still dead. Silvio betrayed everything we built. And tomorrow I have to sit across from the people who paid him to commit murder and negotiate peace like civilized humans. But you're doing it. You're choosing diplomacy over violence, structure over chaos." I pulled back enough to see his face. That's leadership. The next evening, Anthony dressed with meticulous care in a charcoal suit, black shirt, no tie. Professional but not ostentatious. Joseph arrived early with 3 other men whose names Anthony didn't share, all armed but concealing their weapons beneath perfectly tailored jackets. The meeting is at a restaurant in Little Italy, neutral ground, owned by the Greco family who agreed to mediate. Anthony checked his reflection one last time, adjusting his cuffs with precise movements. There will be 4 Yamaguchi representatives, 4 of us, and 2 mediators. Establish protocol. Everyone respects the rules or risks becoming pariahs. What happens if they refuse your terms? Then we prepare for war. He said it simply, as if discussing weather rather than potential bloodshed. But I don't think they will. They're businessmen, same as me. War is expensive and unpredictable. Peace with clear boundaries serves everyone better. After he left, the penthouse felt cavernous and threatening. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow seemed potentially hostile. I tried to work, to watch television, to do anything that would distract from imagining worst-case scenarios. Nothing helped. Around 9, my phone rang. Brittany's name on the screen. Please tell me you're okay and not being held hostage by Italian mobsters. Despite everything, I almost laughed. I'm fine, safe, just dealing with complicated situations. Complicated like what? Because you've been ghost mode for weeks and I'm about ready to file a missing person report. I gave her the abbreviated version, leaving out details about violence and betrayal, but confirming I was with Anthony and things were resolving. She didn't sound convinced, but accepted my reassurances with the grace of a friend who'd known me long enough to recognize when pushing would do more harm than good. Just promise me one thing, she said, before hanging up. If this goes bad, if he becomes someone you need to run from, you call me first. No hesitation. I promise. After midnight, the door finally opened. Anthony walked in flanked by Joseph, both of them alive and apparently unharmed. The relief that crashed over me was physical, leaving me lightheaded. It's done, Anthony said, his voice carrying exhaustion but also satisfaction. Yamaguchi accepted our terms. Full withdrawal from port territory, formal apology for the ambush, reparations paid to the family for damages and loss of operations during the conflict. They agreed to all that? They didn't have much choice. We presented evidence linking them directly to Silvio's activities, showed how their involvement violated agreements between our organizations going back decades. He shrugged out of his jacket, draping it over a chair. The mediators made it clear they'd face sanctions from other families if they continued the conflict. Isolation in our world is death. So it's really over? The active threats are neutralized. Silvio is expelled and powerless. Yamaguchi is withdrawing. You can go back to your life, your apartment, your normal routine. He moved closer, taking my hands in his. Which brings me to what I wanted to discuss. My heart rate accelerated for entirely different reasons. Okay, I know we've been living in crisis mode, making decisions based on immediate threats rather than what we actually want. His thumbs traced circles on my palms, but now things are settling. The danger has passed, which means you have a real choice to make. About us. About whether there's an us. Whether you want to try building something real with me, knowing what my world entails, or whether you'd prefer to walk away while you still can. I'd been expecting this conversation, dreading and anticipating it in equal measure. What do you want? I want you to move in here permanently. Not as protective custody, but as my partner. I want to court you properly, take you to dinners and shows, introduce you to the legitimate parts of my life. His eyes held mine with unwavering intensity. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep with you every night. I want to build the future we should have had 8 years ago. And the dangerous parts? The family business? I'll keep you separate from operations as much as possible. You'll never be involved in anything illegal or violent. But I won't lie and say risk doesn't exist. Being with me means accepting a certain level of permanent security, of always looking over your shoulder. He squeezed my hands gently. I need you to understand what you're agreeing to before you answer. I'd been thinking about this for days, weeks really, since the moment he'd sat down across from me at Bellinot. Every logical argument said I should walk away, return to my quiet gallery life, find someone uncomplicated and safe. But logic had never governed my feelings for Anthony Rossi. I love you, I said simply. I've loved you since we were 17. And I never really stopped. 8 years apart didn't kill it. And danger hasn't scared it away. So yes, I want to build a life with you. All of it. The complicated and the beautiful and everything in between. His relief was palpable. tension releasing from shoulders that had carried it for too long. "There's one more thing." He reached into his jacket pocket, withdrawing a small velvet box I recognized from Bellinot. Inside, the same vintage ring with its diamond-catching light. His grandmother's ring that had started everything. "This belongs to you, whether or not you're ready to wear it yet." He set the box in my palm, closing my fingers around it. "I'm not proposing tonight. I want to do that properly, when we've had time to build something stable. But I want you to have this, to know that my intentions are serious and permanent." I opened the box, studying the delicate filigree work and the diamond that had survived decades to reach this moment. "It's beautiful. She would have loved you. My grandmother had the same fire, the same refusal to accept less than honesty." He took the ring from the box, not to put it on my finger but to show me the inscription inside the band. "Amor vincit omnia." Love conquers all. Tears pricked my eyes as I touched the engraving. "Keep it safe for me. When you're ready to propose properly, this is the ring I want." He returned it to the box, pockets closing around the promise we'd just made. Then he pulled me close, kissing me with tenderness that spoke of patience and commitment rather than urgency. "I love you, Megan Foster. And I promise to spend the rest of my life proving that choosing me was the right decision. I love you too." And I already know it was. That night, we fell asleep together in his room, no longer separated by walls or uncertainty. The city continued its endless motion beyond the windows, sirens and horns and the distant sound of construction that never truly ceased. And somewhere in that vast urban sprawl, Silvio Fiorildi was learning what exile meant in a world built on loyalty and respect. But none of that mattered as much as the steady rhythm of Anthony's heartbeat beneath my ear, and the certainty that we'd survive the worst together. Everything else was just details we'd figure out as we went, building the future we'd been denied 8 years ago, one careful decision at a time. 3 months passed in what felt like moments and eternities simultaneously. The penthouse became home in ways my old apartment never had, not because of the luxury or the security, but because Anthony filled the space with his presence. We fell into rhythms that felt both new and ancient. Morning coffee while watching the sun rise over Manhattan. Dinners prepared together in the kitchen that had witnessed our first almost kiss. Nights spent talking until exhaustion claimed us both. I returned to the gallery full-time 2 weeks after the Yamaguchi negotiations concluded. My supervisor welcomed me back with questions I deflected using the same vague family emergency explanation that had gotten me through the crisis. Marcus noticed the expensive watch that had appeared on my wrist, a gift from Anthony. I'd protested accepting, until he'd explained it contained a tracking device that would alert his security team if I was ever in danger. Functionality disguised as luxury. The perfect metaphor for my new life. I called my mother the week after everything with Yamaguchi finally ended, stumbling through an apology for the distance I'd let grow between us. She didn't ask for details I couldn't safely give. She only said she was glad I was safe, and that we'd figure out the rest one phone call at a time. The contemporary exhibition I'd curated from remote captivity received acclaim in art journals and attracted collectors whose wealth rivaled Anthony's legitimate holdings. Mrs. Liang, the donor who'd withdrawn her offer during my absence, returned with an expanded proposal after seeing the installation's success. Professional vindication felt sweet, proof that I could maintain my identity despite the complications Anthony's world introduced. Brittany remained my closest friend and sharpest critic, visiting the penthouse weekly with wine and unsolicited opinions about my relationship choices. She'd accepted Anthony with grudging approval after he'd arranged for her marketing firm to handle publicity for one of his legitimate restaurant ventures, a gesture that demonstrated respect for people I valued. "He's growing on me," she admitted during one visit, watching Anthony expertly prepare dinner while Joseph provided running commentary from his position at the counter. "Still not sure about the whole crime family thing, but at least he treats you like an equal instead of a possession. That's high praise coming from you. Don't let it go to your head. I'm still watching for red flags." She took a sip of wine, eyeing Anthony with the assessment of someone who'd helped me recover from too many bad relationships. "But so far, green flags only, which is either genuinely good or he's playing a very long game." "It's genuinely good," I said with more certainty than I'd felt about anything in years. Anthony had kept his promise about courting me properly. Dinners at restaurants that required reservations months in advance, tickets to Broadway shows in private boxes, weekend trips to vineyards in upstate New York, where autumn painted the landscape in shades of fire. He introduced me to the legitimate side of his empire, the restaurants and construction companies and import businesses that operated within legal boundaries, people who knew him as a successful entrepreneur rather than a crime boss. But he never hid the other aspects either. Security remained constant but unobtrusive, Joseph and his rotating team maintaining their vigil without intruding on our privacy. Occasionally, Anthony would receive calls that required him to leave at odd hours, returning with tension in his shoulders that only eased after I'd held him and let him process whatever darkness he'd encountered. "I won't lie about what I do," he'd said early on, establishing the ground rules for our relationship. "But I'll keep you separate from operations. You'll never be complicit, never be at legal risk. That's my promise to you. And the moral risk? Knowing what you do but choosing to love you anyway? That's a choice only you can make. I won't judge you for walking away, but I will judge myself for asking you to stay." His honesty, brutal and complete, had cemented my decision more than any romantic gesture could have. One evening in late February, Anthony returned from a legitimate business meeting with an energy I recognized as anticipation poorly concealed. He changed out of his suit, opting for dark jeans and a sweater that made him look younger, more approachable. "I want to take you somewhere," he said, offering his hand. "No security detail, no plans. Just us." We walked through Brooklyn as twilight transformed the city, streetlights flickering on in sequence while the last daylight bled from the sky. Anthony led me to Coney Island, to the pier where he'd mentioned they used to meet as teenagers. The beach stretched empty in both directions, winter having claimed it from summer crowds. "I used to come here after particularly difficult days," he said, leaning against the railing while waves crashed below. "My father would demand things I wasn't ready to do, make decisions I couldn't understand. I'd come here and imagine a different life, one where I was just Anthony instead of the heir to an empire built on violence and compromise. Do you still imagine that life? Sometimes, but less than I used to." He turned to face me, the pier lights casting his features in gold and shadow. "Because the life I have now, with you in it, is better than anything I imagined back then." My breath caught as he reached into his pocket, withdrawing the small velvet box I recognized from months ago. My heart hammered against my ribs as he opened it, revealing his grandmother's ring catching the pier lights with inherited brilliance. "Megan Foster, I've loved you since I was 17 years old. I loved you through 8 years of separation, through threats and danger, and every moment that should have convinced me to let you go." He knelt on the weathered boards, oblivious to passing joggers who slowed to watch. "I want to spend the rest of my life proving that choosing me wasn't a mistake. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred my vision as I nodded, words failing me until I could finally choke out, "Yes. Yes, of course, yes." He stood, sliding the ring onto my finger where it settled like it had always belonged there. The inscription inside the band pressed against my skin, a reminder written in another language that love conquered everything, even the obstacles that should have destroyed us. The kiss that followed held promises and gratitude, commitment and relief. When we finally broke apart, both breathless and grinning, I noticed the small crowd that had gathered, tourists and locals alike applauding this moment of witnessed happiness. "We should celebrate," I said, admiring the way the ring looked on my hand. "We will, but first, there's something else." He took my hand, guiding me back toward the boardwalk. "I made arrangements for a proper engagement party next month. Family and friends, the people who matter to both of us. Brittany's already coordinating with Joseph on the guest list. You've been planning this for weeks, waiting for the right moment, the right words, the right everything." His thumb traced the ring on my finger. "You deserve perfect, Megan. Even if my world isn't perfect, the way I love you should be." We celebrated that night at Bellinata, the restaurant where everything had begun. Anthony had reserved it entirely for us, the staff preparing a feast, while we sat at the same table where I'd found his grandmother's ring floating in my drink months before. The symbolism wasn't lost on either of us. How far we'd traveled from that night of uncertainty and fear to this moment of chosen commitment. "To us," Anthony said, raising his glass. To surviving the impossible and choosing each other anyway. To love conquering all. I replied, echoing the inscription on my ring. The engagement party happened on a Saturday in March, spring finally beginning to thaw the city after winter's grip. Anthony had rented space at one of his legitimate restaurants, a place elegant enough for his world, but approachable enough for mine. Brittany arrived early, helping me into the dress we'd chosen together. Ivory silk that managed to be both sophisticated and understated. "You're glowing," she said, adjusting my hair one final time. Like genuinely happy in a way I've never seen before. I am happy. Terrifyingly, completely happy. The party blended worlds seamlessly. Gallery colleagues mingled with members of Anthony's legitimate businesses, while family members I was still learning to identify by name shared stories about Anthony's childhood. Joseph gave a toast that managed to be both heartfelt and appropriately vague about the circumstances of our reunion. "To the boss and his lady," he said, raising his glass. "May they have decades of happiness ahead." The celebration continued past midnight. Wine and laughter and joy that felt earned after months of crisis and uncertainty. When the last guests departed and we were alone with the cleanup crew, Anthony pulled me onto the empty dance floor, swaying to music that existed only in our heads. "This is what I wanted," he murmured against my hair. "A life where we can have moments like this, where the darkness doesn't touch everything. We'll have that life. We're already building it." I pulled back to see his face, memorizing this moment of complete peace. Together. 3 days later, I stood in a boutique fitting room while a seamstress pinned the hem of my wedding dress, ivory lace and silk that had been custom-made to my measurements. Simple but elegant, traditional but with modern touches that reflected who I'd become. The ceremony was scheduled for early June, an intimate affair at a historic church in Brooklyn, followed by a reception at Bellinate. "You're thinking too hard," the seamstress said, studying my reflection. "Trust the dress. It knows what it's doing." But I wasn't thinking about the dress. I was thinking about how far I'd traveled since receiving that mysterious invitation. How the girl who'd walked into an expensive restaurant expecting danger had found love instead. How the boy I'd known at 17 had grown into a man who balanced darkness and light, with the skill of someone who'd learned those lessons through blood and sacrifice. The wedding planning consumed the following months, details coordinated between Brittany and Joseph with the precision of military strategists. Anthony remained involved but deferred to my preferences on everything from flowers to music, his only request being that we incorporate his grandmother's recipes into the reception menu. "Family traditions," he explained when I asked about his insistence on specific dishes. "I want her there in spirit, want you to understand the heritage you're joining." The rehearsal dinner happened on a Friday evening in early June, warm air carrying the scent of summer while the city hummed with energy. We gathered at a private room in one of Anthony's restaurants. Immediate family and closest friends sharing stories and laughter that built to the following day's celebration. Joseph stood to give another toast, this one more personal than his engagement party speech. "I've known the boss since we were kids running the streets together, getting into trouble that would have landed us in jail if we weren't careful. I've watched him build an empire, make impossible decisions, sacrifice everything for the people he's responsible for protecting. But I've never seen him happy until Megan walked back into his life, to happiness, to love, and to the family we choose." The wedding day dawned clear and perfect, summer arriving fully with warmth that felt like blessing. I woke early in the penthouse that would soon officially be ours rather than mine by circumstance, watching the city come alive beyond the windows. By afternoon, I stood in the church vestibule with Brittany making last-minute adjustments to my dress, while organ music filtered through the doors. "Last chance to run," she joked, though her eyes were wet with tears. "I have a car waiting just in case. I'm exactly where I want to be." The ceremony passed in a blur of candlelight and flowers, traditional words spoken in Italian and English, while everyone who mattered witnessed our commitment. When the priest pronounced us married, and Anthony kissed me with the confidence of someone who'd waited years for this exact moment, the applause that erupted felt like benediction. The reception at Bellinate celebrated everything we'd survived and built together. Food prepared from recipes Anthony's grandmother had perfected. Wine from vineyards we'd visited together. Music that made people dance until their feet protested. Around midnight, we slipped away to a corner table, stealing a moment of privacy in the chaos of celebration. "Mrs. Rossi," Anthony said, testing how my new name sounded. "How does it feel? Perfect. Terrifying. Like jumping off a cliff and discovering I could fly." I leaned against him, exhausted and happier than I'd imagined possible. "Worth every risk. We're going to be happy," he said with the certainty of someone who'd fought too hard to accept any other outcome. Not perfect, not without challenges, but genuinely, fundamentally happy. "I believe you." And I did, because we'd already survived the impossible, had found our way back to each other through circumstances that should have destroyed any hope of connection. Everything else was just details we'd figure out together, building the life we'd been denied 8 years ago, one careful decision and hard-won moment at a time. The city continued its endless motion beyond Bellinotta's windows. 8 million people pursuing their own dreams and disasters while we celebrated ours. And somewhere in that vast urban sprawl, the boy I'd loved at 17 and the man I'd chosen at 26 merged into one complete person, mine in